Welcome, Impactful Parents. It's time for the Impactful Parenting Podcast, where I give you parenting tips and resources to make you a more impactful parent to your school-age child. I am your host, Kristina Campos. Welcome, Impactful Parents. Today we're going to be talking about struggling with motherhood and coping with numbing the pain away. Hello, my name is Kristina Campos. I'm founder of The Impactful Parent, and I help parents of school-age children who want to be one step ahead of their kids to turn their chaos into connection with their adolescent. I'm a mom of four, a teacher that's taught every grade from preschool through high school, and today I help moms and dads like yourself to navigate that exhausting, confusing, frustrating, but rewarding world of parenting. So welcome to The Impactful Parent. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Emily Roondo. And from the outside, Emily seems to have it all together. 4 healthy kids, a loving husband, and the minivan full of soccer bags to prove it. But behind the appearances of the perfect mom, Emily was drinking from morning to night, hiding bottles around the house and cycling in and out of rehab, even once with a 7-week-old baby at home. Now, her new memoir, Wife, Mother, Drunk, an intergenerational memoir of loss and love, reveals how the pressure to be the perfect and societal expectations of motherhood can actually mask addiction and mental health struggles. I know a lot of our listeners are going to be able to empathize with Emily today, and it is my pleasure to have her on the Impactful Parent stage so that she can tell her story and speak to the uncomfortable reality that many moms all over the world are struggling with: masking our pain with addiction. Thank you for being here, Emily.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We're going to start off with your story. Tell us the background of it all. What was going on, Emily?
Well, I didn't know what was going on, actually. But in terms of, my upbringing, I was basically raised in Plano, Texas. My family originated in Minnesota. And I really struggled from the very beginning with being the fit-in girl. And then I had some traumatic things happen to me as I was growing, through my teens and 20s. My parents were both alcoholics. They drank very differently. I didn't really realize or identify my mom as one because she was more the kind of numb out, quiet type, and my dad was more of the raging, kind of stereotypical, like angry drunk. And then I went through a couple divorces. I went through different universities, and my drinking really showed up shortly after I had my first daughter. So I was about 27 the first time I got sober. I was 41 or 42 the last time. So that's kind of a timeline of how long this battle has gone on.
Wow. I appreciate you being here and just being candid about your background and all the things, because it's such a heavy subject. And I know you write about hiding bottles and drinking from morning to night. So can you walk us through what a typical day would look like for you during that time?
Yeah. So I think one thing that I want to say right off the bat is the very first time I got sober, what looked a lot different than the last time, what was going on before I got sober. It definitely only gets worse. I can say that for sure. But what would happen is a typical day, I would wake up before the house woke up, really. And I usually had alcohol stashed either in the garage or in my closet, and I'd kind of sneak off. And I would take a certain amount of gulps, close the door and sort of like pretend like it never happened. But I had to drink in the morning at the end, because my body was physically, it needed it to function normally. So it wasn't like I was waking up and getting, smashed. It was more like I can't function unless I do. I mean, felt like I was going to have a heart attack. I would be shaking. So I would do that, take the kids to school, and I had this battle going on where I couldn't not drink. So I would be like full of angst and think, okay, I'm going to have a little bit. So then it's not so bad. And one thing is that I was always like, it was a full-time job, not only to drink and try to maintain it, but to pretend that I wasn't drinking, to pretend that I didn't have alcohol in my system. It was always like a show. And then my husband at one point, especially towards the end, absolutely didn't trust me. So I would get breathalyzed at night. That was part of our deal. So I would go into like major sober up in the late afternoon. And, that was not pleasant at all. Sometimes I would if I didn't think I was sober, I would come up with things where I would try to lie. I would flat out lie, or I would just try to dodge it. But, and then I would do the dinner, making dinner, getting the kids ready for bed, checking on homework, this kind of a thing. And then after that, my husband would kind of go outside and smoke a cigar. And then I would a little bit kind of drink myself to sleep. And the whole time I'm like trying not to, and I can't stop myself. That's the addiction that's in my brain. Drink myself, kind of to sleep, but I always had to make sure that I had a little bit saved for that morning, the next morning. And then it would start all over again. And I'd wake up somewhere between like 4 a.m. 4 a.m. is like the worst time in the world. I just hate that time anyway. But that was usually when I woke up, was like between 4 and 6 a.m. And I would drink to try to get myself through the morning with the kids, getting them off to school and stuff.
Now you're talking, you're hiding it. And at the same time, I hear you saying that, your husband knew because he's giving you breathalyzer tests. But just to give reference to people who are even identifying with you right now, and they're not in their head, and they're saying, I'm doing this podcast not only to bring awareness to people who aren't in your position, that there are moms out here who are struggling and we need to support you guys, or also to say, oh my gosh, this is me. And to identify with your story and hopefully recover, to help those mothers that are empathizing and say, yeah, they can hear your story and say, me too. And so, to give everybody context, going back to my question, did your family really know? Did they really know what was going on? Or how much did they know?
I don't think anyone in my family knew the extent of how bad it was. I think that, and the other thing, starting from that very first time I got sober, I never drank in public, ever. Like, I didn't have a glass of wine at dinner. If we'd go out to eat, I didn't go out with the, friends and have a margarita. I never, ever drank anywhere out in the open. Never with a wine, never with a glass, any kind of glass. It was always in hiding. And so, usually the way that my husband knew was because either he could tell by the look in my eye that I had been drinking, but he never saw me drink. He's also in recovery too. So he kind of, picked up on different things. but it was usually they found out when I when I got caught, really. And by the time I got caught, I was so tired, and kind of went from there to seek some help.
Well, you
Yeah.
describe the perfect mom facade in
Yeah.
your book. And
Right.
what was that moment? Or maybe there was an event that made you realize that you just couldn't keep living this way.
So probably between my sixth and seventh rehab, I realized more needs to change than just me. And part of what really kind of kept the facade going is what people expect from me. It's it's kind of an interesting dynamic where I had to go away to get better because I would never focus on myself in any other way. I just had to remove myself. And also, it was allegedly better for the kids. I think at one point it became not so great for them. But so I would be doing really well in that kind of an environment. And then I would go home after rehab, and it's like all of us thought, as long as I'm not drinking, everything is good. And really, I had so much on my plate that the kids expected from me, that because it's what I did, my husband expected from me. And I just realized I can't do all this. I can't be responsible for all this. And I'm not just talking about like chores and stuff. I'm kind of talking about like even the emotional caretaking of other people. Like, okay, I got to manage, what's going on here and be there for this person. But I was kind of drowning in it. I was like, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. I tried again. But you go back to the scene of the crime where you weren't managing things in the first place, and think, okay, well, now I'm going to be able to magically do it. And I couldn't. By the time I got to my seventh rehab, I was so close to death that I knew it was, a lot of things had to change. And I had to do a better job of just setting boundaries and saying, I can't do it. I can't. Which goes against this whole like perfect mom facade in general, because we don't want to admit that we can't do it all. And that's even just, I'm a stay-at-home mom, floundering. And it felt like failure. But at that point in my drinking, I had nothing to lose.
I just listen to you and hear your heart,
Yeah.
and I feel so grateful that you're talking so candidly about the struggle, because everyday moms without an addiction struggle with the emotional load, struggle with the workload, struggle with just the multitask, everything of motherhood, and to
Yeah.
have this coupled on top of it.
I also want to throw in mom guilt. I mean, that
Yes.
thing
Oh
is
my
so
gosh.
real. So there's that
Yeah.
too.
Yes. And that mom guilt is heavy. I want to say it's heavy. It's a
Yes.
heavy burden.
Yes.
How did your relationship with your husband and kids change as your addiction then progressed? Like, how did you even navigate being a mother while struggling so deeply?
Um, yeah, that was always interesting. I'll say this, that, you know, you don't stop being a mom if you're addicted to something. It doesn't go away. Like, your love for your kids is still there. And I think it changed a lot when I would start drinking again, because I would sort of, I would distance myself physically more from my kids. We're a really affectionate family. And I was so paranoid that they'd smell it on me or they'd pick up on something. So, in fact, I have this just nightmarish memory of my oldest daughter when she was, going through adolescence. And all she wanted was for me to come sit with her on the couch. And, they were watching a TV show. And I kept making excuses of why I couldn't, because I was afraid she'd smell wine on me. And that it still breaks my heart to this day. Like, all they want is you. So that's something that, those kind of things happened, I think, more like kind of a separation. And I know we use the word isolation a lot, but I thought that when I was isolating, I was helping them. I thought it was better if they're not right up with me in the whole thing.
Oh, you thought you were protecting them.
Yeah, I did. And I think I did that a little bit too with my husband, because the wife in me is sort of like, well, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be another problem to fix. And I don't want to complain or, because my husband was working. I mean, he would leave the house, before a couple of the kids were even awake, and get home, either at, 12 hours later or so. So I didn't want to add on to that. And, me admitting that I'm doing it again was just, I want to be the good wife as much as I want to be the good mom.
And you mentioned this pressure of being that perfect mom. We talk about that. We definitely all feel it. So where do you think this pressure comes from, and how did it contribute to your struggling?
So I think what my book explores is more a personal, where did it come from? Only because I could it's like I could touch it, I could find it, I could see it, I could pinpoint exact things where the society standards of what a good mom is can come off as so vague. Am I making this up? Is it just me that feels this, or does anybody else? But in my family, I got this perfect mom thing primarily starting with my own mom. And yes, she was an alcoholic. She was in an unhappy marriage. I didn't know any of that because I think in our homes, we don't show the humanness of motherhood. It's more kind of like, well, we don't, we want our kids to have well-tended, nurturing, caring, loving moms. So I had this wrong impression of her, and God, she was good. She was really good at momming. I mean, she would bake homemade bread. She would, because we didn't have a lot of money. So, she's mending socks, ironing all my dad's work shirts. I'm like, the other thing I always have to mention, my mother vacuumed the entire house every day. So I had these perfect, ideas in my head of, oh, well, that's what I'm going to be like when I grow up. I want to be a mommy like my mom. And then I went back further to my grandmother, and, she raised 8 kids as a widow. One of them with cerebral palsy. It's, I mean, the woman could do everything. And I'm thinking, I can't do a damn thing. What am I doing? So there was definitely a family connection to the perfect mom idea. And then, I think moms really get caught up in, I call it the curse of comparison, where I see the volunteer of the year mom at the elementary school, and I can't even find the right matching socks for my kids in the morning, more or less, volunteer for 5 hours every day. So there was like those kind of things where I'm just judging people's outsides by how I feel on the inside. And even if I know that's what I'm doing, I still feel it. I still feel it.
I love that line you just said about judging people on the outside for how you feel on the inside. I just had to repeat that. That is like mic drop right there.
Yeah.
Very profound idea and realization. What did you feel like the biggest societal pressure that you had? What did you have to live up to as a mother? Did you feel like you just had to be Betty Crocker? How did
Well,
these expectations prevent you from seeking help sooner?
well, for one, I didn't want to disappoint anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And including, my own mom. I have a mother who got sober once and stayed sober. I have a husband who got sober once and stayed clean and sober. And that's sort of kind of the where I was, that was sort of the recovery expectation. So I was failing miserably. And I didn't want to admit it. I also think that, moms, women in general, can be so harsh to one another. We can be so supportive, but we can also be so cruel. And we do it in such a mind manipulating way. It's like men, I have this image of like, they do get out. They say it, they get angry, they yell, they fight, and then they're better. And, women, we're not really allowed to be mad about something, or have these feelings. And it's hard. I remember one time I was new in North Carolina and I had to go to rehab, and the moms at the preschool were bringing dinners over to my husband Pete and family. They never had to cook. They got meals, all the time. And of course, I was so happy for them. But when I came back from rehab, nobody would speak to me. I was sort of like completely like this passive aggressive kind of shunning. And, it never changed. It stayed that way. Friends that I had, like, oh, I can't be friends with her. I can't be friends with her. And I think that's where we're at in our culture. I think addiction in general is becoming more of a topic, but moms with a problem are we're the worst. I would definitely get treated, in my opinion, harder than dads,
Yeah.
who, oh yeah, he got sober, such and such. But I don't know. I think it's because we're depicted as the caregiver, and, those types of things are just seen as a weakness, as a failure, and they don't go away. I mean, I'm still living with it. So
Yeah. Oh, I am so sorry that has happened to you. And that was people's reactions when you're trying to recover, and then,
right.
the word is out, and here you are struggling and doing your very, very best. And for people to.
Well, and I also think that, we don't want to stand out as being different too much. It's like, and we're not really allowed to make mistakes that we learn from and try to do better. I mean, I'm just thinking about, these whole things of like the idea of ghosting somebody where just all of a sudden they don't exist, or the canceling of somebody. And Like, there's always more to the story. And I think that there's women who would have reached out, but number one, they didn't know how. And number two, like, they didn't want to be that one, you know? And I don't really blame them for that. It's just, I want to share what it felt like to have it happen.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, just to give everybody that perspective. I mean, again, going back to these two groups we're talking to, the awareness side of people and the empathy, people who are identifying with what you're saying, like, and if they're on the awareness side, to hear the what's going on, and that maybe it's okay to reach out to your friend, and it's okay to talk to them and say, do you need anything from me, instead of ghosting and pretending that it's not happening because it's uncomfortable. And so I appreciate all this candid conversation, because it helps people navigate when they find themselves in this similar situations on how to react, what to do.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of when you have a friend or an acquaintance who experiences a death in the family.
Yeah.
And
nobody knows what to say.
And nobody knows what to do. And it's like we're overthinking reaching out, like, oh, I don't want to upset them, or I don't want to come off as this, so I'm just not going to say anything. But on the receiving end, it's like, why can't anybody ask me? It's just this different kind of perspective. And a lot of it just goes to the fact that I think we don't know how to have uncomfortable conversations.
I think you're right. I think you're definitely right. Now, I want to move on a little bit more into what was the most challenging part of getting sober, especially with a new baby at home.
Staying sober. I mean, I think getting sober it's not easy, but there's a beginning and an end to it, because really what you're doing is you're kind of deprogramming your brain to what it's craving. And by, not feeding it that, eventually it does get better. Staying sober was what killed me. Mm-hmm. Because if I look at alcohol as sort of a kind of like numbing, I call it my pain reliever. So like, I'm taking this pain reliever, and then all of a sudden somebody takes it away, or I take it away. I'm in a huge amount of pain. And what do I do with that? I don't even know where it's coming from. But really, I would get sober and be able to clearly see these things that I had done or said or didn't do or didn't say that me as a regular human being would never, ever do. But I was an addict, and now I'm seeing it, and I was being killed by shame and so uncomfortable that boom, it would just like snap into my head, like, I have to drink. I can't feel it. It's too much. I'm going to die. It's like both ends were killing me. My reality was killing me, and the alcohol was killing me. I couldn't win. It was just so hopeless. That's kind of where my hopelessness was with that.
What do you wish somebody would have said to you when you were at one of those really low points?
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about that, and I think it's different for everybody. I think what I really wanted, I just wanted somebody to be my friend. Just be a friend. And you don't need to give me advice. You don't need to try to fix me or solve my problems. Just be my friend. Treat me like I'm a person.
I love that. It's so simple, and yet it goes back to everything that we were just saying. So I love that. And for parents that are listening and who are struggling with addiction or mental health right now, and addiction, let me remind everybody that it doesn't have to be alcohol. I know we're talking about alcohol today, but there is definitely marijuana addictions out there where so many moms are also smoking marijuana in order to do the same thing. It's, it's numbing those pressures of motherhood and
I think
or
women,
pills and also many other addiction things.
yeah,
But
I mean, I think people are addicted to, you can be addicted to alcohol. I mean, alcohol, plus also like exercise. I think a lot of women are addicted to beauty and youth. I think there's people who are addicted, obviously, to their their phone, social media, those types of things where it's like, I need to check it. I can't not do it. And so, yeah, there's a lot. And food. I mean, a lot of people are addicted to food, either restricting it or eating it or, dieting all the time. So, yeah, there is a lot.
I'm glad you mentioned food because I think we forget about it a ton. I forget about it maybe. So I assume everybody else does too, but I forget about food, and definitely that could be. And so as we're listening to this and we're listening to your story, I just want people to, remember that there's so many other addictions out there. And if they are struggling with some kind of addiction or mental health, what would you recommend is their first step that they could take today
Mhm.
to get them one step closer to maybe being a little bit better tomorrow?
Well, regardless of what the addiction is or the addictive behavior, I would say to trust your gut on what, don't try to talk yourself out of it. If you're thinking this might be a problem, then it's a problem. And now is the time to kind of reevaluate. That's what I would say, first of all. And then the other thing is kind of goes on what I was saying is it's really hard for your very first step to be walking into a support meeting or sitting in on some special whatever session that focuses on recovery. I think it's terrifying and it keeps a lot of people from going at the very beginning. But I think try to find that one person in your life that you trust, that you think would listen, and I would start there, really. It's kind of like, who can I just spill my guts to on this and say, I'm a little worried. And it doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, you have to stop doing all these things immediately. It's just sort of, I got to get this ball rolling. And there's something very liberating, believe it or not, about saying it out loud.
And your memoir
Yes.
explores intergenerational trauma. And so, what did you discover about your own family's history that aided and actually helped you understand more about yourself to aid you in your recovery?
Yeah. So I found out actually that, there was always this lore going around, like so and so maybe drank a lot or, this happened. But when I talk about trauma, it's not the event that is the trauma. The trauma is the response to these events. So, I went back and looked at, so my family is really from like small farming communities. And there was a lot of poverty that was very stressful. The women worked all sorts of different things. But then there's stuff like kids are, somebody's child dies tragically. There's war, World War II, World War I in my history, Vietnam. My dad was in Vietnam. And these men come back and they have nothing to do for their own trauma. There was no such thing as PTSD. People didn't talk about anything, you know? And then the other thing is, like, people don't say that they're either died from their drinking or that they're, you know, they're sick from it. It's something else. But I think what I really learned is that the women in my family stayed silent for all of it. Whether it was the men who left for war and they're now responsible for everything, or the children who passed away. I have an example of, like, in my mom's family. My mom, up until about 10 years ago, could not say her sister's name without trying to not cry. And she drowned when my mom was 21. And it's because nobody talked at all about losing her, about her. It was like, after the funerals, you just pick it up and you keep moving. You know, it's this myth of the past is in the past, you know, but nobody talked about her. My grandma never cried for her in front of the kids. And you kind of learn that. You pick up on that behavior of, like, I can't complain. I can't show this. We didn't do feelings in my family at all. It was so dangerous. So I think that the addiction, which is interesting because the men in my family were very out in their drinking. Okay. It was very out in the open, but it's the women who wouldn't speak about it. They never said a word. So I kind of uncovered a lot of this stuff going back. And, you know, it wasn't until I wrote this book that I found out my grandfather was at the tavern every single day. Actually, except for tax day and Christmas, because it was closed on those days. But yeah, it was just like nobody talked about it. And I think my grandma struggled with a lot of grief and depression. Nobody talked about that. And she got physically ill from it. You know, you stuff all this stuff for so long that, you know, it messes up your body. And nobody talked about that. It's sort of like the reputation of my mother's mother was, she's so strong. She is the strongest woman you'll ever meet. But is she really? You know, she's suffering.
Wow.
So I found out a lot of that sometimes what gets passed down isn't necessarily the exact behavior that you come from, but it's the coping techniques that these people use, you know. Most men. Now it later, you know, got to be the women who were drinkers also, but you know, people are going to try to find ways to deal with stuff, and then that's what I learned.
Emily, I could talk to you forever. So, I mean, I could, because I find your story so interesting and so relatable, and you just have such a profound message that I hope I can deliver to the world and help you show it. And part of that is your memoir. So tell us again about it, the name of your memoir, and where can we find it? If we are listening to this and we are just resonating or just want to know more, where can we get this?
Well, okay, it's called Wife, Mother, Drunk. You can get it many places. There's the Simon & Schuster website. If has multiple sources, you know, like you can order it at Target, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all these different kind of places. And then I also have a website, EmilyRoundoAuthor.com. I'm not a tech savvy person at all, so it's very basic, but there are links where you can buy it there as well. So here's what I'll say is that it's definitely a solid read, but everybody who's read it, who has sent feedback, is like, I read this book in 2 days. I could not put it down. It's
Wow.
But I think it's over 300 pages. But I'm not, it's not it's a quick, there's a lot of action in there.
I can't wait to dive deeper into it. And I'm happy to report to the audience that they can get a taste of it too. You have provided us a little bit of the intro. People can read that.
Right.
And so check it out. It's all free inside the Impactful Parent app. And the Impactful Parent app is free for you to download. It's right on your phone's app store. So just go to your Apple or your Play Store if you have an Android, and download the Impactful Parent app, and then go to Emily's episode because it's right here, right next to it. So, and spread the word, as this is such a great message. We want to, I just think this is such a great conversation. I'm so, so grateful for you to just be able to speak like this. I think that this is a hidden and unspoken problem in our world today. I think it's 2 or 3 neighbors on every single block.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I think it's common. It's rampant throughout our society. And yet we're all just, like we've been saying, not talking about it. We're not bringing it to the forefront, and we're not helping our neighbors or each other or whatever that looks like in your community. And so grateful to you, Emily. Please, everybody, go out there, check out the Impactful Parent app, and check out Emily's book. Sounds like we can get it just about anywhere. So this is awesome. One last question for you.
Yes.
And that is, you're on the Impactful Parenting podcast. And so I have to ask, with your perspective, what does being an impactful parent mean to you today, given everything that you've been through?
I think what I've learned at this point in parenting is that time is the greatest thing we can give our kids, is just our undevoted time. And an impactful parent is able to kind of deal with the bittersweetness of raising kids, and the fact that, the goal is, I want happy, independent adults. And it doesn't, that doesn't always feel good when they start to need you less. But I mean, that's the point. Like, that's the ultimate goal. To be an impactful parent means that I have kids who've grown into good adults.
Thank you for listening today. Remember to subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And don't forget, the Impactful Parenting Podcast is an extension of the Impactful Parent community. Go to the Impactful Parent website and download the free Impactful Parent app so you don't miss a parenting tip that can help you and your family. Thanks for listening today. So go to theimpactfulparent.com and see you next episode.